There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but yeah.
When police raided the flat of 35-year-old Zahid Younis in April 2019, they discovered the bodies of 2 women stuffed in a padlocked freezer in the utility cupboard of his flat. Police had been searching the home after he was reported missing. When the police arrived, they noticed a strong smell coming from the cupboard, with flies clustered around the appliance. After prying it open with a crowbar, they discovered a large frozen shape wrapped in a bedsheet and plastic, and a foot in a grey Superman sock. This was later to be identified as the body of Mihrican Mustafa, a 36-year-old mother of 2, a known acquaintance of Younis, who was last seen in May 2018, 11 months earlier. When the freezer was sent to the mortuary to be x-rayed, the body of Henrietta Szucs was also discovered. Henrietta, who was a Hungarian national, had not been seen since August 2016. She was believed to have gone to live with Younis at his home in Canning Town. Henrietta was described as vulnerable. She was living a chaotic lifestyle at the time, struggling with homelessness and addiction to Class A drugs, even before meeting Younis. The post-mortems revealed that Henrietta had 3 severe head injuries, numerous rib fractures and internal wounds, and she had been stuffed in the padlocked chest freezer for almost 3 years. Before the police could access the cupboard the freezer was in, they had to remove pieces of furniture that were blocking and barricading the door. Traces of Henrietta's blood were also found on the carpets of Zahid Younis' flat. A torn up picture of Henrietta was also found, alongside a handbag belonging to Miss Mustafa. Mihrican, known as Jan by her family, was also described as a vulnerable individual. Call records show that Younis was one of the last people to get in contact with her. Mobile data showed her phone was last active in the area that Zahid Younis lived. When Jan went missing, her phone was handed into the police for evidence. When the police examined the phone, a serial number was misread, a piece of evidence that would have shown contact between the victim and Younis shortly before her disappearance. Instead, it was ultimately disregarded. They refused to prioritise the case, as she was not classed as a high-risk victim. When Jan's body was examined, they found fractures to her larynx and sternum. In 2018, whilst Zahid Younis was in jail serving time for a different offence, his electricity supply was cut off at the property on Vendome Close, contributing to the foul smell and decomposition of the bodies. An electrical engineer attended the property in April 2019 to clear the debt off the meter, meaning he had to go into the cupboard next to the freezer. He was met with Younis spraying air freshener to try and mask the smell. Shortly after this, Younis abandoned the property. He was arrested 3 weeks after the discovery, getting into a taxi in Kensington, West London. He told the police, "It's my house, it's my problem. No one else is involved." During court hearings, the jury were told of the defendant's previous relationship with a 17-year-old girl in 2001. Both were the same age and they had a child 1 year later. During their relationship, Younis had become very violent and overbearing, and would often wait outside her house to escort her everywhere. She claimed Younis had threatened to take their child to Pakistan and that she feared for hers and her daughter's life. It was also mentioned that in 2004 Younis married a 14-year-old girl in an Islamic ceremony, and she also became pregnant 1 year later. She also told the jury that the defendant would get very controlling, wanting her around all the time, and refused to let her go home on occasion. He would often hit her with objects that were lying around. He was arrested in 2005 and pleaded guilty to unlawful activity with and an offence of common assault. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison for this. Once out of prison, he began dating another 17-year-old girl who had recently lost her father and was in a vulnerable state. The violence began with slaps, which escalated to punches and then kicks. They would often leave large bruises, and he would often threaten to harm her family and set their house on fire if she ever told anyone what he was doing. He would make her wear a burqa when her mother and sister visited to cover the bruises she had over her body. Younis was arrested and later pleaded guilty to 2 offences of wounding and 1 of assault in July 2008. He was sentenced to 4 years and 11 months in prison for this offence. Younis denied murder but did admit to putting the women in the freezer. He claimed Henrietta mysteriously died on his sofa and said 2 men called Ted Jolly and Tommy Farmer turned up outside his house with Mihrican's body stuffed in a wheelie bin. He said they told him to burn the body and throw the clothes off Southend Pier in Essex. He also added he was out at the time of Henrietta's death and panicked when he saw the body, so decided not to tell the police. He told jurors he did not kill Mihrican and did not know how she died. Younis said he paid a man to help him get Henrietta's body into the freezer and that his accomplice blackmailed him into putting Mihrican's corpse in the same place. Younis showed no emotion as the guilty verdict was read out, whilst members of Mihrican's family, who attended every day of the 3-day trial, shouted in joy from the gallery. Zahid Younis later refused to return to court from the cells for sentencing, where Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb described him as an arch deceiver who spent a lifetime destroying lives. She continued, "The sentence for murder is life imprisonment. The court must set the minimum term. On the 2 counts of murder, the sentence is life imprisonment with a concurrent minimum term of 38 years minus 490 days already spent in custody. Therefore, the formal order of the court is that the minimum term from this day onwards is 36 years and 240 days. You should clearly understand that the minimum term which you will serve for murdering Henrietta Szucs and Mihrican Mustafa is 38 years in custody. You may never be released. That will only occur if and when the parole board is satisfied that it is no longer necessary for the protection of the public that you should be confined. Even if eventually released, you will remain on licence and subject to recall to prison to continue serving these life sentences for the remainder of your life."